So welcome to another war game review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we're taking a look at The Dark Summer, Normandy 44 from GMT Games. This is a two-player war game from
Hex
Ted
Encounter
Racer.
war game,
Yes,
yep.
Hex Encounters from Ted Racer, who's done a number of other games. So this is the third, technically,
Dark series
part
game.
of the Dark series, although it's the fourth. So they did the Dark Valley originally, and then they did the Dark Sands.
Mm-hmm. Which we love that game.
Yes.
It was great.
Then they redid the Dark Valley. I've got the deluxe edition.
Yep.
It's excellent. But then he did the Deadly Woods, which uses the same system.
Deadly rather than dark.
Yes, that's from Revolution Games.
I'd like to get that one now that we really have enjoyed these systems.
It's a bulge game.
Yeah.
It's his bulge game. And then now we've got the Dark Summer. So this is a one-mapper, and I think it was like 1.5 counter sheets or something like that. Maybe it's just one. All fits on a single counter tray, 10 turns long, and it uses a chip pull activation system to move and do units. And this is, whilst you have the D-Day landings, this is June, July, and August of 1944. This is the Normandy campaign. This is not a D-Day game. So you got to take Cherbourg. You got to get units off the map to start racing eastwards. It's Falaise Pocket, all of the stuff that you're used to fighting through all the bocage. It's not just D-Day landings and establishing a beachhead. It's much more than that.
So that was a point we discussed. This felt a little bit tacked on.
Yeah,
the landing procedure and the whole process, the strong points. It all felt, in my opinion, a little tacked on. And your comment I thought was very insightful. Had Ted not put this element onto this game.
Yeah, people would have complained, where's the landings? I just want to do the landings.
And sometimes I think war gamers are the worst. Because, after having played this, really we could have done without that, but it was added because of the... I'm assuming.
No, so...
The potential for complaint, and I felt like we got a watered-down version of what the game really is and should have been. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm just saying this shouldn't have been included.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
I don't know if it watered it down, but it was like, we didn't need to do it.
Well, we spent 45 minutes doing it, and it really made no difference.
Yeah, like almost zero.
And let me explain, because I want to make sure people understand. There's about 20 what are called strong points located on the map.
Yeah.
You're going to take these strong point counters, and they're randomized and hidden, and they range from 0 defense. I think the highest one was a 3.
Yeah.
And you're going to spread them out on these little points, which is very clearly identified, although we had some trouble finding them because we had put a unit.
I misplaced the unit, covered it up.
But what's going to happen is the Allies come in on the first wave, and they're going to hit several of these, and they don't know what's there, but you know what's there. It's 0 to 3.
Yeah, you flip it over, and it's a 2. Well, good, I've got 18 units.
So you're on the 6, almost every time you're on the 6 to 1. In the playbook, I thought it was interesting, because I read it, because I was thinking, there's got to be something we're missing. And in the playbook, it literally says, if it's ever 6 to 1, don't roll the die, dummy.
Yeah, it's
because it's a waste of time.
Because all the results
eliminate the unit. So, we didn't do all 20 of those on the landings. How many did you do on the landings? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 9, right?
9. Of
those 9, only 2 held. And one of them was one of 2 Omaha.
But it didn't do any damage to me, though.
Which I thought was interesting. Did no damage to you.
But then in the second wave, they were all eliminated.
Just smacked them around.
It was just kind of strange. And once it was done with, fine, it was great. You didn't have to think about any of that ever again.
And once again, I wanted to ask the question: what was it really trying to show? Why was it really added? Why was it really included in the game?
Yeah, I think it was just to appease some people.
Well, and that's a shame.
Because you could have started this game with all of those units lined up on the beaches.
Because guess what?
It's going to happen almost
it's going to happen the same way, and you saved yourself 40 minutes.
Yeah,
and I think the game would have actually been better for it.
Well,
frankly.
And
My
and it's not
opinion.
that the game's not good. The game's incredible.
No, this
right?
game is awesome.
You should get this game.
I'm just saying that should not have been included.
Yeah, like
That's my opinion. Unless Ted tells me some reason
Sure.
why it was really added,
and he will.
Great. I
He'll
look
let us
forward
know.
to it. I look forward to it.
But like, yeah, if you'd have just started with like all the beaches open and like a stack of units on each one of them, it'd have been
Same
frankly
result.
identical.
Yep.
Because each turn is a week. Like,
Yeah. The time scale.
D-Day will succeed. Like, the
Right.
landings will succeed.
I think that boiling down my complaint about it, which I don't want to come off as whining, but it's a time scale thing.
Yeah.
It's a week. The actual beach landings took how long?
2 chits out of 14.
Like 3 hours?
Like, or most of the first day for one of the
right.
beaches.
8 hours. And it's over.
Yeah.
It just should have been amalgamated
Yes.
out and not really included.
And having said all of that, I think why I feel that way, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Is,
You don't have to agree with me.
no, but I do.
I will take the heat.
So that you can get to the real game.
Well, yeah, because the real game is about the maneuver and the concept of trying to cut supply and move, and that's what this is about. And that's why. So let me explain one more thing. He really condensed Cherbourg,
Yes.
this entire peninsula, got it out of the game by putting in a box,
Yep.
which shortened the game.
And there's some really cute little rules about that.
Yep. You don't have 2 maps. It's a 1 mapper.
Yep.
Cherbourg, you would have had to have had another map
Yeah,
to really
or like
represent
one of those
it.
half maps, like
Yeah, or
Holland 44.
something. Yeah. So I felt like he did that, but I felt like this could have been.
Yeah.
But just my opinion, because once again, the meat of the game, what you're trying to do here, is the maneuver.
Yes.
The maneuver, the counterattack. Although Germans don't really attack that much, but that's just the way it is. But that maneuver and supply, and that's where it's at.
Yeah. And,
That's where it's at.
and it's really good.
It is.
Like, it's those first few turns where the Allies are really pushing their beachhead out, linking up, and securing their supply sources, you have got a ton of units, and it feels great.
Yeah.
And
It
it
doesn't feel so great for the German player.
It's pretty scary. You're like, this is a lot of troops.
Yep.
There's 130,000 landing every day. And you've got like a couple of ragtag units kind of just like holding the line.
Trying to hang on, yep.
And then it's trying to race what reinforcements you do have to get there. And then it's, I'm trying to encircle you to get you out of supply, which means you're going to take a ton of attrition.
Yep.
I'm trying to...
And it started happening here at the, turn 4, turn 5. It was, I think I had held it off as long as it could happen. It was starting to happen and going to happen a lot more.
And it can take some of that time because half the map is bocage, and it's extremely slow for the Allies to move through that, and it's extremely easy for the Germans to defend in that as well.
Yeah.
So not only are you moving slowly, when you do attacks, usually not that great in certain
Well,
portions of the
and
map.
the way it does 2 column shifts to the left, which is huge.
Yeah.
You're more often than not going to have, as the Allies, 4 and 5 to 1 odds.
Usually it was 3 to
generally.
1 odds.
Yeah. So you take that 2 shifts, all of a sudden you're down to 2 to 1 or 1 to 1.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference because that
At which
becomes a
point-
die roll.
And it's basically a coin flip.
Yeah,
almost.
it kind of becomes a die roll. But as the German player, you've got to understand how bocage works. You've got to understand what its benefits are. And you got to understand how to...
Because you can ignore retreats.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's very strong.
It kind of reminds me of that desperate defense concept in Mark Simonich's 44 series.
Yes.
You can ignore those retreats. You can really hang on and...
But it's even less punitive in this.
Right,
You don't
it's
take any
less
losses.
it's less
just like,
punitive,
I'm
and it's a little
just
easier to
defend.
really do as well.
And that's where, with that being the case, that's where the maneuver becomes so important. I'm stringing out on these roads to drive round to encircle you.
Yep.
I don't gotta shoot you out of hedgerows. I'm just gonna let you starve to death.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and so the way that stuff works together means that in a game of this scale, where you basically have like the entirety of northwest France, it's not just the little beach strip. You are encircling large pockets of units, and you're doing this on a pretty big and very interesting scale. And, there are so many war games where it's like, here's my line of troops, here's your line of troops. And you might have that on a kind of a small scale. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I got like this one little unit and I kind of punch through. Here it feels a bit more grand, even considering it's a one mapper. You're moving entire divisions around, trapping thousands of troops in pockets and trying to crush this and then race off the board to go and end the war early.
Yeah.
It just feels very, very, I don't know. Considering how kind of hard it is to slog through the woods and the bocage, what you're doing felt very wargamey. Felt like I was doing the things that I was supposed to do and the things that I know that happened in the real campaigns, and that's great. That's enjoyable to do.
Yeah, and it also, I found myself really trying to thoughtfully understand what I was trying to do and how I could get where I needed to get.
Yeah.
And a lot of times with war games, like you said, you've got a static line. You don't have to do a lot of thinking about maneuver and movement.
Yeah.
It's a matter of, I'm going to attack here with this combine, I'm going to attack here with this combine, and I'm going to do my air assets here, and we roll some dice.
Yeah, trying to keep my line together.
Yeah.
Whereas this is like...
This is a little different, although, I think the reality, these kind of big games like this, when you play it the first time, you're just not going to, you're not strategically or tactically going to understand really what you should be doing.
And I would say especially with Ted's games.
Yeah. Because I remember when you did your Dark Valley kind of experience solo video, whenever that was during COVID last year, right?
Yeah, that was at least a year ago.
I remember you talking on the video about some things that Ted was sharing with you on Twitter.
Yeah, I was kind of live tweeting what I was doing, and he was like, not really coaching me through it, but he was like, this is what you got to do, or the Germans have to they have to go so hard in there, and so intelligently, and if they don't, it'll end up historically. It will absolutely fail. And it's a very similar type of feel.
Yeah. I think had Ted been right here,
he'd be like every move we do,
saying, hey Grant, you really need to think about this. It would have been different. But now that we would set it up again, I would play it very differently. We already talked about, I think Cherbourg would have gone to the full 5 rounds. And I also think it wouldn't have been... Now that it's collapsed, it's devastating.
Well, and now that I know that, I would have played it differently and pushed a bit harder because I felt like I was.
You were kind of slogging around, so that would have been a little different for both of us. I also think along here I would have spread out a little more, because more often than not, I think I already said this. The odds for you weren't amazing every time because of bocage, attacking across rivers. I mean, I could have done with moving 1 or 2 units out and creating another barrier.
Yeah, the difference between 3 units in bocage and 2 units in a bocage isn't that big of a difference. So you can spread them a bit.
And the type of units the Germans have, obviously they've got some powerful Kampf group units and Panzer units, and then they have some SS that are a little bit better. And those units have a lot of movement. 10. Most of them had 10 or 12.
And the movement's very powerful in this game.
And they also have great defense, and it's like I would have used those a little bit differently. I might have, and stacking is also, you can't necessarily stack 3 or 4 different formation units together.
Yeah.
You got to kind of create some cohesion, so that creates another puzzle.
Yeah.
How am I going to do this?
Divisions together, because you can't stack multiple divisions, but then you can free stack certain units. And, there's a lot of stuff to consider when you're playing this game, but not too much.
No, I actually, to be honest, I think this is a fairly simple game. Rules-wise.
A fairly simple war game.
Right. Yeah, I think we get jaded a little bit. But we know these games. But...
I've also played 2 other games in this series and spent a long time with it.
Right.
So I knew almost exactly what I was getting myself into. So it was very easy for me to jump from one to the next as well.
But it's more about how am I going to do it well. That's what these games, to me, really are about. I appreciate that. I thought the rules were well written. Player aids I thought were excellent. Really helped us get into it. I want to make sure we talk about the chit draw system because I just think it's so fantastic.
So
I love it.
The chit draw system is the core activation system of this. And basically, depending on the weather type...
Which I think is awesome.
Yes.
That's awesome.
So there's
genius.
There's a little weather chit drawer. You draw your chit for weather. Oh, it's sunny. And then you consult the table and it says when it's sunny, the activation cup gets X amount of US unit.
Don't say X
activations.
amount. Say an ungodly amount.
4. They get 4
Yeah,
US
thank you.
combat moves. They get 2 British moves, 2 British
fight
combats, and then 3 German combats.
How many?
3.
Three?
Yeah.
Okay. So 1/3.
Yes.
Okay. Just I wanted to make sure and point that out because I think you've been gloating a little bit. It's starting to bother me.
So you can put all that in, and then you just mix it up, and then you just draw one, and that faction does that thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's the British move, all the British stuff, as much of it or as little of it moves.
Yeah.
And so you do that. And then you draw another chit, German move or combat. They can choose whether to do move or combat.
So the German and the American have the dual chits, which to me, and we talked about this, it's more indicative of the style.
Yeah, the
British were a little more...
a bit more regimented and fixed.
Right. Americans were like, screw it, I'm running in.
Well,
and
they're more
I'm gonna
flexible.
do
They could either do lots of moves or do lots of combats or anything in between, right? It's a bit more of that combat flexibility. And but like you draw shit and you do it. Mm-hmm. And so that has a number of effects. First, makes it excellent for solo play. Like big deal, right?
You're just blind drawing, you just do it
and do what you should do.
Yep.
But during real-time play, what that does for you is it means that you can never perfectly plan.
No.
Like, you kind of have to roll with the activation chits, and at the end of it, you can see the story of what happened, which I just love. I think it's very interesting.
Well, I love the track there because it was funny. We did the AAR.
Yes.
And we kind of, before we shot that, we were like, oh, okay, here's what happened. Oh, yeah, I remember that now. And I just really like that.
And it's cool because it's like, so for example, in the play that we had in one of the final turns we played, the first chit was an attack. So I did all these big attacks that I'd set up and it was great. Next chit, British attack.
And I clapped because that was great.
Yeah.
For me, it was great.
I've already done all the combats that I can do, half of which you'd retreated out of.
Yep.
And I'd advanced after combat in some of them, but some of them were just kind of positioning, and now I'm like, I've got this combat shit, and at best I can do like one combat, which is like almost feels like a waste, right? Mm-hmm. But that's kind of what you get out of it.
And a couple of times, particularly early in the game, you drew a couple British move chits back to back.
Yes.
And that really hampered the British. Now, that doesn't happen as much with the Americans and the Germans because
they
they're
got that
dual.
Flexibility. But it's like, but then it's when do they come up?
Yeah.
You're like, I drew a British attack. Great. Then the Germans get to move, and they might do something in the American sector. And the Americans are like, I want to react. British move. Okay.
Yeah.
Pull the next one. German move, and they do some more stuff over here.
Yeah.
You're like, and the Americans start sweating. You'll know you're going to get a bunch of chits, but you feel getting outmaneuvered. And a big defense is being prepared. You're like, oh.
Well, and that's just it. You know each round, based on that weather, the Americans are going to have 4 chits, and they're going to have, the British will have 3. And so you really know that. And it's a very cool feeling when you're like, oh, okay, look at that. Oh, and 3 out of the 4 British chits have been drawn. Guess what? I can make some hay now. I can do some things over here. As the Germans.
You know this is the British final position.
Yep.
So now on mine, I can go for some encirclements. Yep. I can do some things.
I really like that because, one, it takes, like you said, takes out the ability to perfectly plan.
Yeah.
But it also creates some opportunities to plan to do some things that you weren't necessarily planning on.
Yes.
And I like that because to me, that models the difficulties of, particularly in 1940, 1944, you didn't have perfect radios. You didn't have perfect visual. You had some poor intelligence, and it's just the way it is.
It allows for someone to like slip something in. You're like those little weird daring maneuvers or feints and bluffs that were made. That's kind of modeled in like, I used up all my moves. Someone else goes around and like does something in my flank.
Yeah.
It gives you that instead of like in an I go, you go. It's much harder to do those kind of tricksy things.
Yeah.
Because you're like, keep all my battle line integrity, make sure everything's done like to the book, which never happens in real life. And so I think this gives you some of that, a bit more of that chaos, a bit more of the uncertainty that happens.
Yeah.
And it just makes it excellent for solo play. Just pull Chit and do it.
One other element about the chit draw system is the Germans have reaction chits.
Yes.
And they're very limited.
I think that's new. I don't think that was in the other ones.
I don't remember having that in Dark Sands
And
either.
it wasn't in Dark Valley.
But you'll have one or two of those per round, and you can use those immediately following an allied chit play.
Yep.
And you can use it to activate one full stack or one full formation. So you might have 3 or 4 units spread out in the same formation. And that is very powerful.
Yeah.
That is very beneficial, particularly if the allies have gone and there's not much more activity for them. You can really move around, and I liked that because it threw a little bit of randomness and a little bit of chaos.
Or it's like, oh, they broke through. I can like swing at a guy to plug a gap, right?
And how many times did I do that?
A lot. And it was frustrating.
Yeah, you were like, oh. I was sitting there going, oh, crap, that guy's going to be smoked. And I could see you doing your no emotion face.
I was like, please let me get these guys.
And nope. I was like, I'm going to use that reaction. I'm going to move that in there. And you're like, dang it. And you try to do it again, and I would react. That was cool.
Yeah.
Really like that chit draw system. In fact, I think it's what makes the entire Dark series.
It absolutely makes the system. Absolutely.
And it makes me want to get Deadly Woods. I want to try it.
For sure.
I really do.
Would fully endorse that also.
I also think that Ted's thinking about some other theaters to have this in, but I can't remember what I had heard. I've just drawn a blank on my memory.
Yeah.
Maybe Ted will share with us.
Yes.
But I could see...
If he makes them, I'll play him.
Why couldn't there be a Pacific Theater game on this?
I don't know if
wouldn't that be cool? Dark Seas or Dark Jungle, or
yeah, you could even do like just Guadalcanal or like just something like maybe a smaller scale. But what I'll do is I'll show you the map and how this works, and you get an idea about why I like this so much.
Yeah.
So here's a look at the map, and you can see it's a single mapper, and there's a good chunk of counters up here, and obviously I think we're about halfway through the game, so this is about to start changing significantly as the game moves on. But if you've never played one of the Dark series, it's basically fueled by a chit pull activation system. So you kind of set everything up, and all the units are delineated by their divisional formations, and you're going to pull a chit, and you're going to activate whatever units you can. And the divisions basically limit what can stack with what, and then also for German reaction moves, you're kind of limited by that as well. So why it's good for solo players, you're going to reach into the cup, pull out a chit, and this has a tan background, so you're looking at British and Commonwealth forces, and you're going to activate all of those to do... Well, that's not even the right chits. Most of them I've got all out here. So you pull a chit, and this is, on both sides it says move, so you've got to do a British Commonwealth move action. So you can choose to activate any or all of your kind of 10 units and move them. If you pull a combat, you can do a combat, because the British Commonwealth ones are a bit more rigid. If you look at the German ones, which are these kind of blue background, they have a combat on one side and a move on the other. When you draw that chit, you can choose which side you do. Same for the Americans, slightly more flexible tactically speaking. So what you're then going to go through is you just pull a chit and you resolve it. So you can see for solitaire play, you just kind of do the most sensible thing with that chit at that time. And so it's extremely good for that, and that's how I've played a number of these. And you put them on this little track over here, and so at the end of the turn you can kind of see the flow of what that week's worth of fighting was like. It's an interesting system. But when you're actually using units, you have an attack, a defense, and a move factor. Quite typical. Some units only have 2 factors. That's because their attack and defense are the same. But they still have attack, defense, and a move factor. When you move, you expend movement points, just like how you normally would. When you're attacking, it's adding up all your combat factors, getting a ratio against the opponent's defense factors, and then you roll on a CRT, and the CRT is right here. So really not particularly complicated, nothing you haven't seen before at least. Then, so from that standpoint, not massively complicated. Now, where you get into some of the more interesting parts of this game is how the game simulates things like weather, because weather was a large part of this campaign, and it's a large part of some of the other campaigns as well, the other games in the series, although it's modeled differently, which I appreciate. So in this one, there's a chit pool of weather chits, and you're going to choose one of those, and that's going to be the weather for the turn. So we picked a sun counter. And so what you're looking at then is you're looking at your effects of a sun counter on this play aid. So when it's sunny, the skies are clear. And so normally sunny in every other game would be like, oh, there's do what you want, no big deal. But in this, what it really reflects is the skies are clear, therefore Allied air supremacy is a huge factor in this. So when it's sunny, the German units may not use road MP costs. So the half MP costs for these major roads or the 1 MP costs for these minor roads, they can't use those as they have to go off-road because all the roads are patrolled by, typhoons and all that CAS stuff. And so it basically impedes their movement significantly. Allies can declare a prepared offensive in some combat rounds. Usually it's the very first one of each of their combat rounds. Allied defenders receive a left column shift for air power. So every combat, you always get a left column shift, which is just big deal if you're defending. Allied carpet bombing is allowed. So you get out these, there's a couple use per games of these carpet bombers. You throw that in, gives you a column shift. You can do it once more in a campaign. So you got to be judicious about when you use those, but those are available to you. Each Allied TAC air marker may be used once per Allied combat or combined action round. So you've got these TAC air markers. You can use them on every single combat chit that you pull this turn. Normally, you can only use them on one of them. Well, or not, it's not even normally. That's the thing. There's no normal state. There's 5 different weathers: sun, cloud, showers, rain, storm. The game is 10 turns long. You'll have 2 of each of those throughout the game. So there's no normal game state. It's very interesting because sun and cloud, both sun and cloud, you're going to suffer that. If it's rain or storm, there's no Allied air cover. So Germans can use all the road costs that they want to. They can use artillery support because they finally have that available. They can set it up without fear of it just being knocked out immediately. And then showers is kind of somewhere in the middle, where I can only use Allied TAC air markers once, but we can use the naval support markers if anyone's kind of in a range of that. So it makes a significant difference with kind of what's available tactically and how the Germans can move and attacks and things like that. But almost more importantly than that, the weather informs the composition of the chit cup. So if it's sunny, US has 4 move combat counters, British has 2 move and 2 combat counters, and Germans have 3 move combat counters with 1 reaction. Whereas if we compare that to a storm, the other extreme, the US only has 2 move combat, so they can do much less. British, 1 move, 1 combat, quite punishing. Germans still have 3 move combats, but they also have 4 reactions. And the reactions are a new thing to this title, at least from the ones that I've played. We've played Dark Summer and Dark Valley on top of this. And you can use a reaction after any Allied chit. So they, British do all their moves. Then the Germans can play 1 reaction, and it means they can activate 1 stack to do a small move, or 1 formation, so 1 division. So if you've got a couple units from a division spread out, they can all kind of move. And it just gives you an extra little bit of reaction here and there, but obviously you can only do that when there's no Allied air cover, so that you get a lot more of those. You get 4 in the storms, only 1 of those available for the whole turn in the sun. So that it's such an important part of the game. It's random, right? You're going to draw those. But how those come up is going to inform some of the story of your campaign. But also, those never get returned to the cup. There's only 10 turns, there's only 10 chits, so if you draw a sunny one, the Germans are going to be kind of hosed, and the Allies are going to make good progress, generally speaking. If they draw another sunny one or another cloudy one, it's gonna look real. It's gonna feel kind of bad, maybe. But you know, at some point in the game, there's going to be a couple storm ones coming up, and it's more likely that those are going to be slightly closer together rather than being spread out because you've already kind of front-loaded some of the good ones. So you know that at some point the Allies are going to get bogged down, and you're going to be able to maybe cobble together a defense or kind of make a small counterattack kind of a thing. So it's a really interesting little subsystem in the game. But the reality is other than that, it's a really nice, clean hex and counter war game. You know, if I've got a stack of counters and I'm going up against a stack of counters, we just calculate the ratios of our strengths, look at our little CRT, and then if I'm the attacker, I'm going to commit something like my tank destroyers and my tac air marker if I'm available, just to increase. That's going to increase my number, and that might tip me onto a better odds-based chart. If I'm able to, I can throw in the carpet bombing. That's going to put up another column shift, and then the defenders gets to kind of counter those with some of their own markers, and then you just roll a d6, and then you consult the table, and you do what it says. And because this is a small game, and what I mean by that is it's one map, and it's only 10 turns, and that's much shorter than something like the Dark Valley. The combat results table has a lot of results on it. And I also rolled extremely well in this game, but like, if you're going to roll a d6, even on the 1-to-1 chart, the attacker loses 1. That's the only, effectively, like, bad thing that can happen to the attacker. You can roll a 2, which is no effect. You can both lose 1, but at least the Germans lose something there. And then everything else is some version of the defender retreating a couple spaces, and you get to take ground after that. And that's on like the 1-to-1. Even on the 1-to-2 odds, usually when you get into these 1-to-2, 1-to-3 odds, they're extremely punitive. But even on the worst odds in the game, it's a 50-50 that nothing bad happens to you as the attacker. That's extremely good. As far as war games go, in my experience at least. So this is a game of aggression and of fighting. If you can be the attacker and you have the initiative in that kind of tactical aspect of it, things are going to go probably a little bit easier for you. And so taking advantage of the weather as the Germans, you're going to be on the back foot a little bit as the Germans, but as soon as the rain and the storm comes, if you can launch a counterattack. Again, attacking's very strong. If you can get any kind of odds, even bad odds, pushing the Allies back even a little bit really, really hurts because this is a game of time. You're racing against what is effectively a fairly short clock, even though it covers almost 3 months, to kind of get out of Normandy and to get into northern France. So that's kind of how this game works. What we'll do is we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So that was a look at the map.
Great game.
Excellent game.
Really enjoyed this. I mean, we played for how many hours? 8 hours?
Yeah, probably.
And we only made it through 4 turns, but we're notoriously slow.
Yeah, and we did read the rules, and we also got lunch. Or
yeah,
dinner.
It was a dinner break, yeah.
But, like, this is a game that you could... Like, once you get the rules down, you can play this in 6 hours.
What does it say on the back of the box?
I
was looking for the time.
They stopped putting it on here. They're like, 1 turn represents 1 week. Yeah, they stopped 4+ hours.
I
what
could
an
see,
incredibly vague timeline.
And I could see that if you have the rules down and know, because I think that the turns
it will take more than 4 hours.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. 4 hours is to me, this is 6 to 7 hours.
If it's lasting you 4 hours or less, it's because someone's got an automatic victory.
Yep.
Usually that happens if you've had catastrophic dice or catastrophic tactics.
Yeah.
Like, the Germans are going to auto-win if they can crush your beaches.
I don't ever see that happening.
You've either played extremely badly as the Allies, or you've rolled really, really badly, and the Germans have rolled extremely well and been extremely aggressive, which is very risky.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is probably going to go...
6 to 7 hours.
Mostly the full length, I would imagine.
Yeah. Well, frankly, I conceded because I could see what was happening.
Yeah.
And I could also see, knowing the weather chits that were left, I wasn't going to have...
It was going to be a tough uphill battle.
Right. So because it was late. I conceded. We could have easily played that through.
Yeah, I could play play all day tomorrow, and like we could have finished it. Sure,
Yeah.
But it's nearly Christmas, so
Yeah, right.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
But I really liked this game. In fact, this is really the first really great hex encounter game I think I've played this year. The other couple games we played, I was just like, they were okay. Trying to think of some of... And we played this near the end of the year. This is December. This came out in July, June,
we've played
August.
a few that I have really liked.
I'm just drawing a blank, but...
It's late.
I think I just like the chit draw system in this so much, and the maneuver.
Well, and it's a pretty clean game.
Yeah.
Like there's like the Sherbo rules, and then like the landings that you do once at the very beginning, and almost everything else is just the rules of the game. Yeah. There's not like a ton of exceptions. The rulebook isn't particularly large.
That is one thing that I there are some of those rules that you're going to have to make sure you remember. Like I said, the formation entry. That was something we forgot a couple times.
Yes.
When there's storms, the ally gets a -2 modifier to their die roll. So they're going to get less formations that are coming in. Makes perfect sense, right? The seas are choppy.
Yeah, boats can't get across.
Yeah, maybe the mulberry got destroyed, blah, blah, blah. During was it Sun?
During Sun, the Germans suffer that penalty.
So that was something I think we messed up more than we got right or forgot.
Yeah, we both messed that up once apiece. So
yeah, and I thought it made a difference though.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is there's some...
We both had too many forces on the board.
Agreed. There's some general rule reminders on the back of this player aid. This, to me, you need to highlight and really keep front and center.
Yeah, I was using the other side of that play.
That's true.
Because it had all the weather stuff.
The other one, though, was the German in the bocage, not having to retreat.
Yeah.
The zones of control also not extending into cities is big as well.
Yes.
And I think a couple times we messed that up.
But they do extend out of cities.
Yes, but not into. So it allows more free form. Heck, I can pull a whole stack back and move a new stack in because...
Yeah, it makes taking con really difficult.
It's very difficult.
Which is a meat grinder in this game anyway.
And I felt like that played out very historically and very well.
Yes.
Over here, the Germans, I just messed up too much, frankly. I didn't make some good moves. I didn't put some units. Things like, I forgot this guy didn't have a zone of control. I would have put an infantry unit there and it would have been a totally different outcome. But well played.
It's an extremely clean game.
Yes.
It is, and it's also very reasonably priced. Comes in a little 1-inch box. I've got a paper map, and I've got a counter tray, and a rule book, and 3 play aids. All fits in a 1-inch box, which is like, thank goodness.
Well, and it fits in a 1-inch box because there's no mounted map board. Yep. You put a mounted map board on this, my guess is you're going to need a 2-inch box.
Which, when they inevitably release it, I will not get it. Like, there's no need.
Yeah, we've got it.
Stick it under a plexi.
Yeah, there was one errata we noticed on a hex.
On hex 4003, there are 2 hex 4003s. Yep. One of which is a first wave landing hex.
And it should be 4002.
Yes.
Because it was funny, as at the setup, you had these 2 or 3 units stuck here, and I'm like, why are they just floating in the ocean?
And I was like, they're supposed to go on hex 4002, but I don't know where that is. Because I was only looking at the landing hexes, and I'm like, oh, it's misprinted on the landing hex.
We need to cross that out and write 4002. But I love the map. I think the map's very well done. I think the game's very well done. Very well designed. It plays really great. I'd love to play this again.
Yeah.
And make some different choices, and I think it would make that experience even that much better.
And to that, this is also a game that I'm actually probably much more inclined to set up and play on my own as well, because it's only 1 map, and frankly, it's not that long.
Right.
Like, I love the Dark Valley. I would do the same thing.
It's long.
It's twice as big. And probably 4 times as long. Like, that's a much bigger commitment. As this is less of a commitment, it's easier for me to kind of almost whip it out and play it in a day.
Yeah.
So
and this is the smallest game in that series. Dark Sands is 2 maps.
Yes.
And it has it has like the 4,000 miles of North Africa condensed down into
those separate areas.
Well, the maps have different scales, which I think is very cool. This is definitely, it's a 1-mapper, feels like a 1-mapper, but it has a lot of depth. I mean, it really, really does.
Yeah,
I liked
if
it a
you've
lot.
never played one of these, this could very easily be your first
Yep.
one. No reason to
A great
no reason
starting
to not
point.
jump into
Just
this.
make sure you remember those general rule
Yes.
reminders, because
Yes.
they don't make the experience that much better.
So, The Dark Summer Normandy 44 from GMT Games, designed by Ted Racer, just came out in 2021. Excellent game.
This is on my list of my top 10, no
Yeah,
doubt.
you got to get this,
No
got to
doubt.
try this. We've all played a million D-Day games, but this is much more than that.
Yeah.
This is the full Normandy campaign.
This is not a D-Day game.
on one map.
Yeah, it's not a D-Day game.
No.
Get
not
that
even
out
a
of
little
your
bit.
get that out of your mind.
You might see this and think
It's
that,
called
but it's
Normandy
not.
for a reason. It's the whole
Yes.
of West France.
And it does
that's
it
so well.
without 4 maps and 12,000
Yeah.
counters, which I really
I have
appreciate.
Day of Days.
Yes.
I do, right? How many maps did that sucker have?
And that is a D-Day game. I
It's-
don't think that goes until August.
No, it doesn't. It does not.
Like-
it's like the 2 weeks of, maybe the week of
Yeah, like,
D-Day. I mean, literally.
what are we doing?
But that's a great game. 5 maps. I think it has 1,200 counters. This is a very playable, very quick, relatively speaking.
I think a lot of people, if you're newer to wargaming,
Get into this. Yeah,
this
you're
is like,
gonna like it.
I want to play a hex and counter game, I want to dive
Yeah.
in. This is the kind of game we dive in. You're familiar with the history. We all know you've watched the movies about it.
Yep.
And you get to play it all out.
Oh yeah.
So, appreciate you guys tuning in. I've been Alexander from PlayersAid.com.
And I'm Grant.